Hey everyone, welcome back to Next Chapter. And as you may know, if you're a fan of the channel, subscribed here, we are not huge fans of Goodreads. Goodreads has weird stuff on it. It only uses star system, which is its own conversation. But today we thought it would be fun to dive into Way of Kings specifically and take a look at some of the one-star reviews, some of the things that make it a non-5-star perfect review book. And some of the people have interesting thoughts and feelings about why that is.
Yeah, and as you know, The Way of Kings is the worst book ever written, according to
these people. My goodness. Wow. They have some thoughts.
And if you've seen our videos before, obviously we 100% disagree. So we might as well go see what the other side has to say. See if they have any kind of justification for what
Maybe they do. Maybe our minds will be changed and opened as we read through these one-star reviews. But let's dive right into it.
Okay, let's hear it, Jaden.
I have a couple. I know you have selected a couple fantastic one-star reviews as well, but I'll start. This one is from Simeon, and it comes from June of 2021. Not sure if that's relevant, but we'll see.
Yeah.
He says
right after COVID, so
coming
out of COVID, maybe
a COVID book.
Needed a COVID book.
Maybe a new reader.
A new
Let's
reader.
see.
Okay.
Let's dive in. He says, couldn't get past more than a few pages due to how badly it is written. He uses the word shard barrier in every other sentence to indicate his adversary. There are other words you can use, like foe, enemy, opponent, etc. Seems like the author doesn't own a dictionary. And another thing, and this is my favorite part, just because it's fantasy doesn't mean you need weird names like Zeth.
Wow. What did he call it? A shard what?
Shard bearer. I just mispronounced
Dang
it.
it, Jaden. If that was the way it was, that'd be hilarious.
It could have been. So you haven't seen these before, but one of the things that I loved is the fact that he's like, Zeth is a stupid name.
Yeah.
You can't write like that.
Horrible book.
Yeah.
Horrible book.
Well, he says he only got a few pages in, so that's like one of the only names he read. So I don't know how he would feel about like Shalon maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of pages, all he read is Zeth's opening scene.
Oh my gosh.
I guess the opening scene was probably with like Kalek and those guys. He didn't have a problem with those names.
Oh my gosh, dude. That is just the worst, okay? First off, that scene is incredible. If you walk away from that scene and saying like, wow, that was a weird name. Can you imagine? The guy walks on freaking walls and you're like...
Maybe our recommendation to Simeon is he should be an audiobook guy. Maybe he's just not cut out for the written word on the page. You know, hey, to each their own, but that might be a good recommendation.
It could be a good start. I mean, you got good old Michael Kramer just nailing it with the voices. And
absolutely right.
And the whole field.
But that is a one-star review. Do we feel like it's a fair one-star review? No. Honestly, no. That one's going to go in the bin of you're going to have to try again.
Try again. Okay, cool. Well, as we were going with that theme, let's say this one is from Brian from November 9th, 2015. So I started from the older side. So
okay,
here we go. I really wanted to like this book. I really did.
Don't believe you.
I don't believe him either. You started with a 1 star, okay? But as slow as it started and as difficult as it was to keep up with Kaladin's dismissal flashbacks, the only joy I found in reading this was Shalon's story.
Whoa.
Yeah, whoa! Unbelievable.
Really?
That is the biggest critique of his books is Shalon's story. Completely blown away by this. She was witty and courageous, and her plot to steal the functioning soul jewel from the king's heretic.
Whatever that is. Hashtag spoiler.
Who knows what a soul jewel is? Never heard of one of those. Was very enjoyable to read. But I kept getting yanked back and dragged deeper and deeper into Kaladin's demented past until I descended into Non-Balat's demented story, pulling off crab legs one at a time for fun. He does have a point there with Non-Balat. He is a freak show.
Yeah, that's true.
He's a crazy person. I would agree with you there.
I don't think I saw a single 1-star review that was that lens of like Kaladin's part was the worst.
I know. Can you believe it, dude?
I'm shocked.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Do you feel like it's a fair 1-star review?
I think it is interesting. I think the Non-Balat...
It's an honest
the Non-Balat
review.
comment, I can see it. I think he got the Shalon thing a little bit backwards with Kaladin. Kaladin's the interesting story, like here. Shalon's fine, but if he is upset about it being like slow and trying to get back to like the action and everything, like come on, like Shalon is not the part that you're gonna be loving if you're really upset about like it being too slow.
Yeah,
her whole story is slow and being like in a library trying to get
lots of reading,
Yasna's attention, reading
inside of a book. That's pretty meta for you.
Yeah, for real. For real.
Interesting. Okay, well then I have one for you that is very related to that. And might be the exact opposite. Okay, it's by someone named Rainer.
Ooh.
I know. And I know this is our 1-star review video, but the beginning of this says, slow but worthwhile start to an epic. Sanderson masterfully sows seeds of plot, and as readers we ask questions that will not be answered for many books to come. That could be the start of a 5-star review.
Yeah, I know. Really could be.
So let's continue on this journey. The Way of Kings showcases Sanderson's best and worst prose. The point of view cast of characters can be lined up on a scale from Shalon's terrible 21st century Americanized prose to Dalinar's appropriate epic fantasy prose. Another critique, but more a stylistic type of thing, I would say.
Yep.
Let's dive deeper. Having read this novel and the ongoing series multiple times, it is always refreshing to go back to the beginning when the premise was still new and mystical, the plot solid and linear, and most of the characters felt like they belonged in an epic fantasy story. That is a 1-star review.
That sounds like a 5-star review.
I was like, what? There is one more line in this review.
Oh man, tell me.
The last line, which I have highlighted for the viewers, is a solid 5-star novel without Shalon's chapters.
Brings it down to a 1?
That is the reason I highlighted it.
Unbelievable.
You're telling me this is a 5-star, 1,000-page book, but the chapters about Shalon were so bad that the average for this book in your mind is a 1-star. I was like, wow.
Man, to get to that kind of average, you'd have to have some negatives in there.
Exactly.
You have to be like
negative stars.
4.
Negative 4 stars.
Yeah.
For Shalon. I was like, wow. I read that whole review and I'm like, this is a good review. They liked it. And they've come back to read it multiple times, but gave it a 1-star because of Shalon's chapters. So
oh my gosh.
They should talk to whoever wrote your review. Was it Brian or Dave
that's what I was just
something?
saying. It's Brian.
Brian and
would
Rainer
disagree.
need to figure something out because I think they'd meet in the middle at like 4.5 stars.
Oh my gosh. Dude.
Not that Goodreads would let you give 4.5 stars, but...
Well, I would say, so this is interesting. This is one of Sanderson's biggest critiques of all of his books, is that he does not write with enough prose in his books. And people do not like his prose, I guess is the better way of putting it.
Yeah.
His style of writing. And for me, at least, that has never bothered me. I have loved Sanderson's description of this. He says, my prose and style is very, very specific. It is specific to bring in as many people as we can into the fold of fantasy and enjoying books as possible. Because you get the Tolkien books out there that are just very poetic and like beautifully written, but they're very slow. They're very hard to get into. And it's not very they're not very quick reads, but people who read those kind of get turned off by fantasy. But by Sanderson bringing in a whole new world of just a very easy to read, very fast paced, very understandable book, you're able to get more people into it. I don't know. I'm a big fan of that. I think it's great. I can recommend Sanderson books to people because I know that they're going to enjoy it no matter who they are, if they have never even read fantasy before.
That's a really good point though, because you're absolutely right. Thinking back on the books that I've read of Brandon Sanderson's, his writing, maybe grade level, prose is a good way to describe it, but the complexity and the way that he actually writes the words is much less than in other books. Like you mentioned Tolkien and others. I wonder, I know that's an intentional choice. He's mentioned that before in interviews and he tries to write that way. I think personally, there's such a barrier for most people in the world to diving into a book and reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that barrier is only increased by complex prose, for sure. That's hard for people to read, especially people with just don't even have as much time, let alone educational background. But it's you don't necessarily have to have that educational background to enjoy complex prose, but you just might not have enough time to dive into that and to be analyzing and critiquing that constantly. You might just want to jump into a story, and the story should carry the book, not the prose.
Yep.
So I think that's an interesting take.
Oh yeah, I think it's super interesting. To me, it feels a lot like people who I feel like a good comparison would be like, I can't enjoy any play that is not written in the style that Shakespeare wrote.
Yeah.
And like, okay, like, yes, he was like one of the great playwriters, right?
But if you're not a Lin-Manuel Miranda fan,
exactly,
I don't know what you're doing.
Exactly, dude. It's just different. I think a lot of people get confused with like, well, Tolkien wrote in a very specific style.
Yeah.
But honestly, I kind of feel like his style was written that way in large part because that was like, he was writing back in the day. They talked like that. People read books like that. They were classics. And we live in a very different world right now that has like changed in the way that we speak, in the way that we read things. And to get confused with fantasy with that kind of writing style is, I don't know, I just feel like they can be separated, like writing style and like fantasy, that it's just like magic and everything.
They should be separated. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this in previous episodes, but like take Brahms and Mozart and Hans Zimmer, right?
Yep.
I personally would say that they are both all three absolute legends of their medium. In the time that they lived, they created masterpieces, and it's incredible.
Yep.
But they're so different, like so different. The tools they had access to, and also just the different creative minds. But it's like each one has such a great place in just the overall body of music, right? So it's like they can both be legendary works, Hans Zimmer, Brahms, but you can enjoy them in very different purposes, very different settings. Like there are some instances where I really want to listen to Mozart and I don't really want to listen to Hans Zimmer. And there are many other times where I'm like not really interested in classical music. I want to listen to Hans Zimmer and music score from movies. So I think trying to push every author into the same bucket is a huge net negative to the overall landscape of fantasy. I think that is the hill that I will stand on.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm, like I said, I'm a big fan that Sanderson does this. I completely agree with
So let me read you this one by Balefire. I know it was your turn, but this is very relevant.
No, go for it.
Very short, very sweet review. Well, short. Balefire says, "I'm sorry, but Tolkien is better at this."
Okay.
1 star.
1 star. Okay. No one who is better than Tolkien is allowed to write fantasy.
Not even that. No one but Tolkien should write fantasy, apparently. We should just have cut it off.
Tolkien is the standard.
He is fantasy.
If you are not Tolkien or better than Tolkien, you are actually not writing fantasy.
Do you honestly think that Balefire would ever think that anyone is better than Tolkien? Or do you think that's just an easy out to say, oh, Tolkien, who everyone thinks is a classic, is the best?
There's no way that he thinks anyone is better than Tolkien.
No shot.
Yeah.
I can guarantee
Which
that.
Tolkien is very good. We have Lord of the Rings. Like,
it's true.
Lord of the Rings, massive Lord of the Rings fans here.
Balefire 398 has 174 reviews on Goodreads. I haven't looked at them. How many of them do you think reference Tolkien?
That's hilarious, dude. He probably has multiple
I bet
reviews on the same one.
60% mention Tolkien in some way.
I believe it, dude. I believe it, man. I believe it. And probably most of his reviews are of Tolkien's work and just like writing several reviews of the same.
I bet he's just like, best ever.
Best ever. It's the only thing I ever read.
I just read it over and over again in different languages.
That's it.
I thought a short review like that blows my mind because it's like Tolkien was a great writer. No one is discounting that. Wrote some incredible stuff.
Yeah.
But to just say every other author has to be compared apples to oranges against Tolkien is ridiculous. So I'm going to put this one in this is an unfair 1-star review category and throw it away.
Okay. I agree. Okay. This is Juliana.
Okay.
Utter, sounds like a cow here.
Could be.
Failure.
Oof.
I read and loved Mistborn, so I expected this to be good. I cannot deal with any book in which the body count is more than the number of pages. I could not get through the first few pages. Okay.
Hold on.
There's a lot to digest here. First of all, I am 100% sure that the body count in Mistborn is way more than the number of pages.
I'm just thinking she should never try to crack open a history textbook.
That's also true.
You're going to be World War II is going to be a heck of a lot more body count than number of pages.
Can we just list off spoilers for Mistborn for a second here? But you get people being beheaded in that first book. The Lord Ruler is just chopping off the Resistance heads. He kills an entire army of people in the caverns. They kill they have the Inquisitors go through and destroy an entire tavern of people. They are making new Inquisitors by killing people. Vin goes in and kills hundreds of people in an army.
So if it says she loved Mistborn, doesn't it?
Yes. But she said, I cannot deal with any book in which the body count is more than the number of pages.
So she wasn't paying attention to Mistborn?
She apparently does not know that people died in the making of Mistborn.
I'm sorry, Juliana, I have bad news for you. Very bad news. If you ever go back and reread Mistborn, you're going to have to update your Goodreads review.
You might have to give it 1 star.
You're going to have to. There's no other option. I mean, they've clearly stated if there's a higher body count than pages, they hate it.
Yep.
That's not my words.
On top of all that, I could not get through the first few pages. Do you know what
this is a continuation of the review?
That's all she says at the very end. I could not get through the first few pages.
Few pages?
Do you know how many deaths there are on the few pages? 1. It's Gavilar.
Gee.
King Gavilar. That's it.
Does it start with the Heralds? Or does it start with
the
Zeph?
Heralds. It goes with the
Zeph?
Heralds, then Zeph, then the kid.
And then it starts. Okay.
No, it doesn't start. It goes to the kid who's in the war, and
Yeah.
So but even there, you don't even see any death.
Wow. Okay. Well, along the lines of being disinterested in the book overall in the first few pages, that's shocking. But other people feel the same way, I must say. Unfortunately, Lynette agrees with Juliana. She says, I couldn't even get 5 minutes into this book.
5 minutes? Was
Not
she listening on Audible?
We will get there.
Ooh.
Not for me at all. I can't imagine having to listen to this for 48 hours or whatever it is.
She was an Audible reader.
We know, A, she agrees with Juliana. B, she listened to it on probably Audible. Mm-hmm. C, she's not a fan of great Audible readers. And D, 5 minutes? Do you know how little you get through in 5 minutes?
Probably just the acknowledgments
The
in the beginning.
fact that you couldn't even get 5 minutes into the book is crazy to me. You got the book on Audible, right? You got all excited. You downloaded it, which probably took a few minutes on its own. Downloaded it to your device. You go to read. You hear Michael Kramer. Jump right in there. You get all excited. You're going to jump into a new book. And then 5 minutes later, you're like, I hate it. 5 minutes?
I'm not even the slightest bit interested in what these 10 people are doing and who they're leaving to be tortured for eternity.
It feels to me like you were forced to listen for 5 minutes and you didn't want to do anything to begin with. Like if you have to have gone along the lines of I want to read this book. You gotta give it a chance. That's not even half of a chance. 5 minutes is like word count less than 1,000 words that you listen to.
Yep.
And you're like, I hate this book. I'm not going to read it. 48 hours compared to 5 minutes.
That is nearly judging a book by its cover.
That is exactly right. Judging an audiobook by the acknowledgement.
It's like, yep, hate it.
I was blown away. So Lynette, you're unfortunately getting to go into the not fair 1-star review category. If you can't give it, I would say an hour, but maybe even 30 minutes to really get your first story arc of some sort, your first setting, anything. You can't judge it in 5 minutes. I will not count that.
Although you do have to give her some, not credit, but understanding. We have talked about The Way of Kings in some of our other books. And if the opening is a good opening for that book, the very first chapter.
And I do feel like I disagreed in the fact that it was a great opening because it is confusing.
You said that
I mentioned that in our review.
It's not a good opening.
That it's not a good opening because it's confusing. That being said, 5 minutes is ridiculous. Come on, Lynette.
Okay, Jaden, I've got another one for you.
Let's do it.
This is Lewis. He says, was very disappointed as I did not feel anything for the characters. Oof. I stopped reading a third into the book.
Wow.
Yep.
He gave it an honest shake.
Yep. He did not feel for Kaladin.
Or anyone.
Kaladin goes running into a hailstorm of arrows.
He runs his bridge in like the 4th chapter.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, don't care. Can you believe that?
That's
like,
brutal.
Some of the most powerful moments where you're just like, man, that guy looks like he's going through the worst thing a man could go through. And he's like, yeah, I don't really feel it. Nothing.
Wow.
I know.
I'm
surprised.
shocked.
This book is literally all about the characters and feeling for the characters.
Yeah.
Just being destroyed for them and thinking like, man, that would be a terrible situation to be in.
And he's like, it's whatever.
This is whatever. Doesn't matter.
Well, I'm disappointed in you, Lewis, but you gave it an honest try, and it's just probably not a great time for rereading a book for you. I mean, it's just crazy.
Apparently, you cannot connect with human beings.
That's what it is.
It's got to be what it is.
Wow. Well, Curran, or probably Curran, it's a difficult one,
Okay.
says they read the first 100 pages and they're so boring. And their explanation for that I have highlighted because I think it's
Brilliant.
eye-opening, at least. It says,
were they reading the wrong book?
that would be funny.
That would be
It
hilarious.
says magic shouldn't be science because that defeats the purpose of magic.
Oh.
Do I have some thoughts? Yes. Yes, I do.
So you would rather have magic that is just willy-nilly and just does whatever
Insane.
the freak you
Yeah,
want.
just no rules at all.
That makes
all
for an
kinds of
interesting
power
story.
creep, just insanity. That's the only way to do magic, apparently.
Only way.
I am like, okay, there's the quote, right? The famous quote. It's like, oh, now I'm going to forget it on camera. It's like,
Yeah.
science is magic when you don't understand it or something like that. I had it in my mind. Do you remember
No,
it?
I don't, but that's a good quote.
Basically saying that we just don't understand science yet, or magic is just science we don't understand yet. I think that's what it is. Magic is just science we don't understand. So, that being said,
Magic's just science that we don't understand yet.
is that exactly what it is?
Yep.
I'm a genius.
By
By Jaden Feddock.
Arthur C. Clarke.
Arthur C. Clarke. Yeah, I remember.
Yep.
Anyway.
There you go.
Since that's the case, this guy is ruining that. He's saying magic has to be something that can never be scientific at all. Doesn't follow any sort of natural law of any kind, even a fantasy one. And I think that's like every magic system ever should follow some sort of natural law. Whether they make up natural laws or not, if there's no laws that it's bound by, natural, scientific, or otherwise, then it's nothing. It doesn't make any sense to anyone. That you could pull anything out of anywhere, and it just is just a mess.
This is the very reason why
Disagree.
Brandon Sanderson books are so good is
Yep.
because he has rules that actually work, and you have to live around that and learn about like the book, like how are we going to solve this problem, because you can't break the rules, and it's masterful because of that. His books are amazing.
That's why you trust it. There's not massive plot holes that you could just fill with new magic. You could just reinvent. So anyway, sorry, Curran, but no.
Yep, I would say that is the best part of a Sanderson book, because the whole time in the Sanderlanche you were waiting, because he always, without fail, he will put you in the most like horrible moment of despair.
Impossible situation.
Impossible, but then finds a way that is reasonable to be able to come out of it.
Yep.
Which is so cool, because the whole way you're looking for it, you're like, you know that something's going to get resolved. Maybe.
But considering this reviewer only read the first 100 pages, they never received that Sanderlanche of information. Unfortunately.
Man, how can you read the first 100 pages and then feel like it's too science-based? You don't understand anything about how these things work.
No, it's, I don't know. Honestly, it's disappointing. Disappointing. That's from March of 2022.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Day 700 of COVID.
Wow. So I've got one last one for you. This is Sen from 2015. He says, "This book is geeky.
Ugh.
I read comic books and play video games, so trust me when I say I have a high tolerance for the geek culture. But this book is written like a video
Okay.
game, except you can't play. So reading this book is like watching someone play on YouTube without the funny comments. You didn't get to the wit part, apparently. But that's how uninteresting and geeky this book is. The main character is so boring that it makes him unlikable. And get this? I couldn't even finish the first chapter. It was just too geeky and boring. Okay.
Wait a second.
Wait a
You
minute.
don't even know the main
Yeah,
character.
you haven't even met the main character yet. That was the biggest kicker of this whole thing. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, the main character is so boring and unlikable. Like okay.
From the first interlude?
Yeah, I know. Like, okay, are you talking about one of the 10 heralds, Zeth, or the little kid who gets forced into war? Like,
That's just too geeky. It's clearly, and he's a video game comic book reading guy. So
Yep.
he's tolerant of the
knows.
character.
He knows. So I just love that.
The first chapter, that does not add up. It really just can't.
It
You
doesn't.
can't just read the first, maybe chapter 1 versus like the prologue he's saying. So he made it through the prologues.
I don't know, dude.
But then chapter 1,
He's
Kellen's
expecting.
not geeky. He's a soldier.
He's wanting a Marvel movie in a book, okay? He wants geeky, like nerdy comments, not nerdy, like funny comments throughout the whole thing that doesn't
Random
take itself
witty
seriously.
comments.
Yes,
and
that's better. Because we're nerds. We love
Yeah,
being nerds.
come on.
Come on. Come on.
That's, I'm shocked. So, you know what? My big takeaway from this is that most of these reviews have very strong words to say about a very small portion of this book.
Yep. And they're all correct. The Way of Kings is a horrible book.
I'm blown away that they're
Just
like, I read 5 minutes. I read 1 page, 1 chapter, even 100 pages. It's like, it's the whole book's terrible. The plot makes no sense. You're just setting up the plot. Yes, it's a long book. I will give you, and I've given some critique about the fact that it's long. And there are some introductory things that take a little bit of long time to set up. You should know that going in. That will help your expectations. But to discount the whole book off of like 5 minutes, I think is so lazy. I'm just going to say it. It's so lazy.
Well, and this is why these people did not go and watch our video on the order you need to be reading the Brandon Sanderson books.
That's the problem.
It is the problem.
They need to subscribe.
They need to write.
They need to comment.
Yep.
They need to like the video.
And then they'll
and
like the
then
book.
Actually enjoy the book.
But
it's as easy as it gets.
Yeah, it's right. But in all reality, if you read Mistborn first, you get a much shorter book, a lot more high action packed, and you can see that there's going to be payoff for all of Sanderson's book.
Yeah.
That's why I tell everyone, that's why I told you, like, listen, I love The Way of Kings. You can't go there. You have to start with Mistborn first.
And that's exactly why I enjoyed Way of Kings, is because I had that experience. And I wonder if that's another reason why, like we mentioned, obviously subscribing to the channel, but being part of a community that is supportive in the space.
Yep.
Because if I had started Mistborn, I told you I started Mistborn 3 or 4 times before
Yep.
I eventually got through it. It's like, it's a little bit hard to get into.
Yep.
But I'm so glad that I did on the, like, my brother-in-law as well as you, like, telling me keep going, try and read it again.
Yep.
Like, it's really worth it. That community is like, okay, I'm going to read it. And I love
Yes.
that book.
And can you imagine going through that same experience, but with Way of Kings, where you had to get through 40 hours? Like, I promise,
all
get to
by
the end,
myself?
like,
No way.
you'll enjoy it.
No chance.
Yep. And the thing is, yeah, exactly. And the thing is, you will enjoy it, but you just have to understand that Sanderson has a promise of an amazing finish, an amazing conclusion to a book that has a lot of setup. But once you get to the end, you love the setup. You're like, this was perfect. I would not have changed any of this setup.
Do you feel like this means that you should do preparatory work before starting a book? Do you think that makes a difference? I almost feel like I'm in English class saying that. But do you feel like you need to understand, like, okay, before I dive into this series, I should learn more about how Brandon Sanderson writes, or the style of the book, or the prose of the book? Maybe I should do a little bit of research first and then get into the book. It does feel a little bit like literature class.
Yeah.
Is that useful?
I would probably not that far. I probably wouldn't go that far.
Do the YouTube version of that and just do a quick intro to Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah,
and
and I think a lot of people just get that naturally from people that they talk to, their friends and everything. Like, hey, you'll love Sanderson. He's so good at this. He's so good at that. And then you kind of understand what you're getting yourself into. And then you have like homework to read, like Mistborn. before you get to Way of Kings.
So you're accepting that, like community guidance, basically, as far as
That's what I would
learning
say.
about the. Yeah, I like that. I like it. And the best way to get a community in books these days is online. Whether that's Twitter, YouTube, BookTube, whatever. There's so many ways to dive into a fun community, and I think that's awesome. That's almost half of the fun of getting into these books, is being able to participate in a community. So, like, if you have any interesting thoughts on these 1-star reviews or the books in general, if you've read them, I need to read them. So share them in the comments section. I will read them and respond to them. It's so much fun.
Yep. Share your favorites. We want to hear them.
Maybe there's 1-star reviews of this video out there that we need to read.
Wow. We will be doing a video in the future of all of our all-time comments. Hall of Famer
some
comments.
of the best comments we've ever received. There are some absolute gems in there.
There are some good ones. So,
if you want to be included, make it count.
That's right. That's right.
Thanks for joining us this time. We always appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe if you aren't already, and we'll see you in the next video.